Hey, what's up, everyone? Morey Croson here. Today, we're going to be doing some top-end speed breakdowns, my favorite thing to analyze. I'm going to start the video right now. This is the newest edition of the Performance Lab. Reach your individual goals. You don't want to just talk about straight line speed. We also want to talk about your ability to be quick. We break down your video. Let's make you into the quarterback I know you can become. All right, we're going to hop right into it here. This is something that we are able to get through Reddit. It's just a lot of different athletes that puts different videos on Reddit, obviously. We're doing this all the time here within our sprinting programs and also with just individual athletes that we're working with. And so we want to be able to get just a little bit better understanding of some of the main things that we want to be able to work on, want to be able to see. So what stands out with this guy is really just too big of a difference between the different strides, right? So when you see the right leg coming off the ground and the backside cycle, there's a lot more limited action here with that right leg. He's not getting that foot up as high and therefore is limited with the amount of distance he gets in that right leg as it pulls through. Where the left leg with a little bit more height, there's not as much hip extension happening here on this side, but he gets a little bit more height with that foot coming back behind, and then also has better reach with that left leg out in front, and then again goes back into the right leg, not as high with that right foot. In general, I think we need to be able to just have a little bit better foot strike, make it so we're landing more underneath with the foot, pulling that foot back underneath, not landing so much on the outside part of the foot, and that should impact the ability to run a little bit faster. All right, this one we see just not enough hip extension in general, right? So as this foot comes off the ground, we need to be getting much more pullback. This is why there's so many people that I think are just messing people up by talking so much about the vertical force and really the maximization of vertical force. And really when I go through this, that's like the main thing that I see is just so many people are just trying to push straight down and therefore just limited in what they're able to do, because this guy, you could tell he's landing very flat-footed, right? You want to be landing much more on like the front part of your foot. You don't want to be landing so flat-footed and then getting almost no extension in the hip. We'd like to see this to be around 125 degrees when that foot's coming off the ground. 120, 125, or, within a good, healthy margin. Right here, you can see he was at like 105. Okay. He does a good job with his front side mechanics. He has good reach. He has good knee height. There's a lot of things that he does well, and he's pretty fast. This one, he does a better job of landing in a good position within his foot, but again, is just not getting enough extension in the hip. That one's better, 120. Again, but we need to be able to see a healthy similarity. There should be much more symmetry between both legs as you're sprinting in order to really maximize your top speed, or else you have one leg or one stride that's slowing you down while the other stride is speeding you up, and you're really only going to be able to go as fast as your slowest leg, right? So if you have one leg that's really fast but your other leg is slowing you down, it's going to end up having a negative impact on your overall performance. This, we just need to have better control of the arms. Okay, so as he's going through, he's getting really that right arm goes way too far out to the side and gets stuck back there, and then as he comes through with that right leg, he's just not getting great foot strike. Both arms, I think, get a little bit too extended as he's coming back behind. Left or the right foot as it's striking the ground, that's way too much of like a straight down action, right? Where we want to be able to get much better pull back, much better of a horizontal force. He does a better job with the left one, landing more on the front part of the foot, better position overall, and therefore ends up getting a little bit more extension there. Where on the right side, you can see that arm going way off to the side, pushes more straight down with it, so it's gonna end up affecting the top speed. This is somebody that he said he was new to sprinting. He's just has a hard time getting to his top speed was his thing. I would say one thing is we don't want to be so far forward with the head. Okay, I've been talking about this recently on a couple different videos, and this is a great example of somebody that is just out too far with the neck, out too far with the head, and that just throws off the center balance, right? The first thing that we do as we're young and adolescents and trying to figure out how to move in the world is get control of the head, okay? And because of the center balance that gives us. So when you're that far forward with your head, with your neck, what that does is that limits what it is that we could do within the legs, because it throws off the center of balance in general. Okay, so now we're going to end up having a lot more difficulty when it comes to foot strike and really being able to maximize performance. Again, not great hip extension. Okay, we need to be able to open that up much more, that leg up much more, that hip up much more as it's going back behind us. Doesn't do a bad job with the arms coming out in front. I think he's a little bit maybe too far out in front with the hands, but definitely needs to be getting much more pull back as his arms coming back. Like, look at how little of height he gets within the elbow, right? We'd like to see that elbow to get closer to even with the shoulder, right? So when your hand is that far down and your elbow's that far down, that just means we're really not getting very much pull within the arm. This person talked about how he needs to get faster. He's running, I guess he started off the season running 12.3, and then it's just been running 12.5, 12.9, all that type of stuff. Pretty good start. You know, he talked about how he's doing a really good acceleration with the start. I think he does a good job of being able to maintain a good foot strike as he's going through. And really what the issue is what ends up being his biggest problem isn't impacting him as much as the start as the top speed, which is he's landing on his heel, right? Look at how when his foot hits the ground, his heel is more towards the ground. Again, lands super flat-footed, lands way too far out in front of him. His knees way too far bent. You know, I would say he's a little bit wasting his arm action where he's bending too far forward in the front. Backside, he's doing not a bad job. But just as that arm comes through, wants to be here and then pull right back. All this extra wasted motion, yeah, it might not be a lot of frames, but it's a big deal. It makes a big impact on how well you're able to strike the ground and how well you're actually controlling your foot strike. On the left side, he's much worse here. I mean, you can see he's crossing over too with his legs. I mean, there's so many things that he's doing bad here. Right side, he doesn't do as bad of a job of landing on the heel, but he's landing with the foot turning out to the side a ton. So there's just a lot of lack of control within his sprinting. You know, just needs to have a lot more understanding of what is proper sprinting mechanics and what's improper sprinting mechanics would be my thing, you know, or my opinion on what he needs to do. It looks like he does a good job with the block start, but you know, he's just so inefficient at top end speed that he has a long way to go in terms of being able to get something that's under 12 seconds because he's just landing so flat footed, and then turning out with his right foot so much that he's really not generating very much force into the ground, or very much force even back behind him, which is the biggest thing that he needs to be able to do. There's a new sprinter, and I see so many people that do stuff like this when they're first starting. Okay, you have to come up with the elbow here, right? That first action needs to be elbow up, hand up. I know a lot of people talk about you need to be staying down with your chest when you start. Obviously, you could tell that this is not great, right? He needs to, keep his chin tucked, but that spine should be coming up so then he could drive that knee through and be able to get a good initial foot strike. Way too much lift out of that front foot. That front foot shouldn't be lifting as high. We should be getting good low heel recovery to be able to generate more force out in front. And so when that foot gets so far back behind, now it really impacts the front side mechanics. If we don't have great front side mechanics from when you're starting, we're going to have a hard time building speed. If we have a hard time building speed, building acceleration, getting into a good drive phase, then we're going to end up getting into a top end speed position way too early, way too upright, way too early. Once that happens, now it becomes much more difficult to be able to achieve very fast top speeds, right? You can get up to maybe 16, 17 miles an hour this way, but you're going to be working very hard to do that. So it's going to be hard to be able to sustain. You're going to need a lot of power and strength to be able to do that. And you're still going to end up getting beaten by people that might be weaker, that have more effective ground strike. There's been a lot of studies that I've been reading about that have been talking about it's not about the strength as much and the power as much, and even the amount of force as much as how it is that you're striking the ground. Okay, so there's people that are even able to generate a lot of force into the ground, but are still struggling with either maintaining speed or building speed because of how it is that they're striking the ground. So at the end of the day, the technique is most important. You have to understand your technique and then build off of your technique. And if you don't have that clear understanding or a very good base for that understanding, it's going to make it a lot more difficult. Again, just very excessive with the arms, right? Way too wide with the hands, way too much extra action as the arms are coming forward and through. We don't need that much bending. If you have this much bending in your hands, I can guarantee you that your stride frequency is not great. If your stride frequency isn't great, then you're not going to be able to have overall very effective acceleration. You're not going to have a very good drive phase, right? When you're first starting off, there's a lot about the big difference between high-level athletes and not as good athletes is the stride frequency, right? And then as time goes on, the stride length starts to increase and become a bigger differentiator. But at the beginning, you got to have good stride frequency. You don't build good stride frequency unless you have very efficient arm swing. Okay, if your arms are going way too far out to the side, or if you're wasting too much time with your arms coming through, right? Too much elbow bend, not really getting your elbows goes all the way through, now you're going to end up not being very effective at building speed. There's another person that you could tell is just trying to create a lot of vertical force. They talked about how the coach and a lot of the people that he trains with, his peers, whatever, talking about him looking like he's just going high knees. Well, yeah, it is. You are just doing that. You just lift your knee up and then just put the foot straight down on the ground. So you're not gaining any ground, right? You have maybe a lot of force into the ground, but you're not able to get very good range, right? Look at how little amount of knee flexion he has, right? Great knee flexion really comes from combination of effective use of the hamstrings as well as effective use of horizontal force, which is essentially effective use of the hamstring. So as that foot strikes the ground, and we all know, or I guess a lot of people should know at this point, that the amount of hamstring use is most active, or the hamstrings in general, most active right before ground strike. So they would be right here, okay, which would be a horizontal movement. But if you're not getting a very good horizontal movement, you're just going straight downwards, then you're not going to end up using very much your hamstrings. You're going to be using much more of your quads, which are going to tighten up the leg. So then as that foot is coming off the ground, you're going to be too tight in your anterior chain, or the front part of your lower half, your front part of your leg. And now you're not going to be able to get great knee bend. Okay, you're not going to have great ability to access your hamstrings. If you can't access your hamstrings, now you're not going to be able to set yourself up to be able to have a very good foot strike because you're not getting your foot high enough. So, it's a whole chain. Okay, you need to understand that it's a building process, right? If you just try to uncontrollably run fast, you're just not going to have nearly as good of results as if you really understand the running principles and really try to maximize the running principle. This guy's pretty good. A lot of good things here. Again, excessive range of motion on the front side with the elbows, too much elbow bending, a little bit too straight as the arm's coming back. That's going to end up causing typically a lot longer backside action that could end up causing more likelihood of like hamstring injuries, overuse stuff, making it so you have a lot more difficult time with that stride frequency, which is what I'm seeing here for him. It looks like to me that he would be a lot more susceptible to reoccurring hamstring problems, as well as much more difficulty being able to get to a good effective top speed and being able to hold a good effective top speed. Why am I reaching my top speed so late into the curve? Yeah, so we can see here just not great push-off mechanics, right? So as that foot's coming off the ground, it's important to be able to get good extension coming back. I just made a video about this actually. And then from here, we need to be able to get good bend in the leg to make it so then we can get right back forward and through. If we're lifting, especially this early, if we're lifting and also turning that foot out to the side, see how that happens right there? Then that causes, or that's from a lot of tightness within the hips typically, or also just like a lack of range within the ankle because of how late it happens. To me, it looks like it's more of a hip thing, but really it comes from not understanding the importance of front side mechanics. Like, look, this is when you started, and you started from a 4-point stance, 1, 3, 5, 7. Like, I mean, look at this action here. This is just not a great action. What are we doing with the foot? We need to be able to keep that foot much closer to the ground and much more about knee height and not so much about, I don't even know what the focus is. I mean, it looks like the arms are trying to come forward a ton. We're not getting any pullback within the left arm. Right arm's getting a little bit more pullback, but both arms are really pretty limited there. And we're just turning out way too much with the feet. Terrible range of motion there. Not having great ability to transition forward. A lot of times that ends up coming from, again, how that foot's coming off the ground, how we're striking the ground. And because of that, we're just not able to get effective into our top speed. All right, this person, long jumper, looking to improve their top speed. Talks about how they've been trying to do it for a while and undoubtedly the hardest thing to be able to do. Yeah, so in this person, I would say ends up having a lot more of a focus on the front side, is really not using the feet very well as they're striking the ground. So maybe just trying to get faster by just getting stronger within the hips and using a ton within the hips. When the foot is striking the ground, we should be seeing a combination of height within the hips, right? So we should be wanting to get high within that your hip joint in general. And then we also would like to be able to see a pull back within the foot, within the ankle. So we're landing with as much force down underneath the body as possible while maintaining as much an upright position as possible. To me, it looks like he's just trying to reach out with his legs, right? He's trying to get as much distance as he can per step. And while, he ends up probably generating a good amount of force by doing that, it's just hard to be able to sustain that for a long period of time. So, there might be times where he is able to run a really fast top speed, but it's probably not very repeatable, not something he could do time in and time out. And or if he is measuring like a 10-meter fly, he's probably getting very inconsistent results, and also probably tires out really quickly. So even if he's at his 100-meter top end speed, just ends up able to really have or run very many sprints because of just a lack of capability from like an energy system perspective. So just gets tired quick. His body might be fatiguing very quickly because he's working so hard to accomplish less. Our goal is to really become much more efficient, so then we could be better at working less to be able to accomplish more and therefore be able to improve our speed. Everyone is cued to be upright when sprinting, but he doesn't like it, thinks that it makes it so he runs slower. And I would agree, you do want to have a bit of a forward lean, but you don't end up wanting to be too much upright. Typically, people that end up having too much of a forward lean really lack the ability to connect to like that arm swing, right? Or too tight within their like shoulders, may end up having some issues with like balance and the ability to like lengthen through their hamstrings or control the lateral shift within the hips. All these things are common when it comes to issues when balancing or trying to get to an upright posture. To me, it looks like he is a little bit tight. Might also have some issues with his center of balance in terms of just the head position. Okay, if your head position is out of whack or it's too far out in front, that will also make it so it's a little bit more difficult to be able to strike the ground, be able to really maximize your top end speed. And I would say, that ends up being important when you want to be able to the difference between being upright when you're sprinting as opposed to having a slight forward lean. Last speed check before a 4-week hiatus. I like the extension. It shouldn't be extension and then pull though, right? We've talked about this in the past where it's like we want to get this foot out in front, but we want to be doing that as we're pulling. We don't want to extend and then pull. So that's what I would say is the biggest issue here, is that he's trying to extend and then pull rather than extending while pulling down with that foot, which would make it so then he could generate more force in the ground. Due to improve my top end speed form, better knee bend, right? So as that foot's coming off the ground, we need to be more effective at being able to get that foot right back underneath and really being able to maximize the action. It looks like the left leg is a little bit worse, but being able to, in general, maximize the lift that we're able to achieve. So part of the being able to run fast is a lot about stride length, right? How much distance we're able to cover. This looks like he's a little bit shorter, so he needs to be able to maximize his stride length. Well, two things go into stride length, which are, one, how far out are we getting? The other thing is how far up are we getting? Okay, to me, he's doing not a bad job of getting out, but he needs to be doing a much more effective job of getting up, so he's able to have more time off the ground and therefore be able to really build speed and generate more force in the ground as he's striking. Can I improve my sprint and top speed? It's almost impossible to tell because it's uphill. First thing that I would say is if you want to improve your top speed, then you should be training downhill sprinting. So don't give me a video if you want to improve your top speed of you running uphill asking for technique advice, when really, in this situation, you should be going downhill, because right now what you're doing is you're limiting your ability to fully access your frontside mechanics. And by going uphill, it's just reinforcing that issue. You could kind of tell even as you're going, and it looks like you have way too much of an external rotation or a turnout within the foot because you're working so much on maybe an uphill type of an action. Your arms seem really limited there. If that was your top speed, there's a lot of things that can improve if that was really the top speed that you have. Feels like I have my high knee drill running top speed. This might be the same guy. It looks like it's the same guy, just going straight up and down instead of being able to. So he's trying to maximize vertical force instead of being able to use that foot and be able to pull back underneath. Notice how he's just trying to push down into the ground. It's not about pushing down. It's about pulling that foot underneath as you're striking the ground to really maximize your ability to generate the most amount of horizontal force, or force where your foot's coming back underneath you. It looks like he's also crossing over within his feet as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to improve. I see this all the time with people people where it's like there's 8 different things you could probably work on, and being able to really, and this is why I say like the sprinting analysis and getting a breakdown is super important, because now we can at least be able to establish and differentiate between what are the key areas within your sprinting that need to improve, what are the key areas that need to get better. If you're spending too much time just trying to correct everything at once, you're not going to get better at anything. But if you could really isolate it and say, okay, I need to get better at this one particular part, and these are some exercises, these are some drills, and then progress that over a period of time, that's where we've been able to see the best results within our programs, within our ability to get people faster. And that's what I do with the people that I work with individually, is like, let's get better at range, let's say, or stride length, or let's get better at your foot strike, or let's get better at your arm swing, or let's get better at whatever the case may be, your ability to bend your knee effectively, your crossover, let's fix your crossover. And when we do those types of things, when we really get specific into those types of things, that's when we end up seeing the best type of results for people. So yeah, as always, guys, I hope you like this information. I know this ends up being kind of a long video, but it gives a lot of different types of sprinting issues and things that you could work on as a sprinter to be able to improve. Obviously, this is just a small piece of all the different things that we can see when it comes to running. Obviously, if we get like a back view and also a side view and are able to work a little bit more in depth with people, it gives us the ability to see a lot more when it comes to the ability for you to be able to get faster. And just what we wanted to do here is just provide some value into your sprinting and your top end speed, and be able to give you the opportunity to be able to see some of the things that can help you run faster. There might be some things that apply to you, maybe some things that don't apply to you, but either way, these are all concepts that I think are important when it comes to sprinting. And if you guys want to learn a little bit more about what we do with our sprint analysis breakdowns, and how you could be a part of that, or even our speed program, you can check that out in the description down below. I just want to add some free value for you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, leave those down below. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.